China just played a surprising move, and America is facing severe consequences. More than 14 billion in goods disappeared overnight, causing the global economy to stagger. Is this a strong counterattack from China, directly hitting Trump's trade strategy? What will the US do when its tax policy now becomes a double-edged sword, causing them to pay a heavy price? I thought that an economic shock like this would have a great reason. There would have to be a war, a natural disaster, or a pandemic strong enough to cause the economy to fall into crisis. But no, this time it's completely different. More than 14 billion USD of goods disappeared overnight. Not because of natural disasters, not because of epidemics, but all simply one tariff decree. Well, just one decision from the US government, and everything changed. Immediately, the scene in American seaports became filled with silence. The port of Los Angeles, the largest, busiest port, is now incredibly quiet. Then, 80 container trains were canceled. The cranes stopped completely, and the atmosphere in the place that was always busy suddenly became tense, paralyzed like a ghost town. This is not a temporary problem. America and China are no longer just two economic powers confronting each other verbally. Do not have violence. Not available. Declare war, which is a Cold War. A war where no one fires a gun, no one raises a threat, but this silence resounded like a declaration of war. And that's when the war came. The global supply chain officially started. It started on an ordinary morning, day April 20th, 2025. There was no storm, no war, no epidemic, but an economic earthquake broke out with just a piece of paper. The US government announced a new decree, taxed at 145% on all goods imported from China. No one expected that a single decision on a desk would have such terrible destructive power. Almost right at night, 14 billion USD of goods forced from China turn around and cannot dock in US ports. Container ships that should have been on their way to the West Coast, carrying everything from electronics to machine parts to clothing, have been delayed indefinitely. In the first week, 80 train bags were canceled. The busiest seaports in America, Los Angeles, Long Beach, Oakland, Seattle, suddenly, as if someone pressed the pause button. The crane stands still, no mechanical sound. Port staff must take a break, and the whole logistics system as if it had just been unplugged. The once vibrant scene is now quiet. People are starting to call it a ghost town. At the same time, on the other side of the globe, Chinese ports like Shanghai, Tianjin, Guangzhou also fell into chaos. Containers are stacked as high as mountains. There is no more space in the warehouse, and the truck driver then sits and waits tirelessly, not knowing when the goods will be able to leave the port. Some people are required to turn around. Others must wait indefinitely. But the game doesn't stop there. To relieve pressure, businesses hastily found another direction. They started redirecting the flow of goods to the US East Coast ports like New York, Houston, and Savannah. The idea is good, but in practice it is not as easy as expected. These ports are much smaller, equipment is not enough, manpower is not enough, capacity is not enough. To receive huge amounts of goods are pouring in, and so blockage begins. A headache-inducing paradox appears. West Coast, where there is modern infrastructure, great capacity, lay dormant again due to lack of goods. Meanwhile, East Coast, where capital only takes on a small part, again, overload, suffocation. In less than 10 days, the whole US freight system fall into a state of serious imbalance. It all started with just one line on the tax decree, but the consequences spread quickly like a domino effect, causing trade between the two powers to fall into a state of suffocation. In just 30 days, more than 80 container shipments crossing the Pacific Ocean from China to America were canceled. An unbelievable number, but it is reality. Huge ships, which should have been surfing, carrying important goods into the US, now do not turn around. The goods are still on the ships, but no one knows when they will be delivered. The major ocean shipping company began to react in ways that few could have imagined. Hapag-Lloyd, one of the illustrious names in the industry, has stopped direct flights from China to America. Instead, this airline only keeps flights with points conveyed, that is, ships only stop at an intermediate port before continuing their journey. This adds time and cost, but it is the only way to minimize risk. CMA CGM, another giant in the shipping industry, also cannot sit still. Surname 40% off number of ships crossing the Pacific Ocean. America is no longer an attractive destination. Container ships from China, which are giants transporting goods, now begin turning to European and Southeast Asian ports, completely bypassing America. So those giant ships now only stop at other ports, leaving America behind as one risky destination in the eyes of global shipping companies. The situation in America is not any better. The truck, which was the backbone of the logistics industry, has now become solitary. The cars had no goods to transport, and a series of drivers quit one's jobs because there was no more work to do. The distribution centers in states like Texas, Kansas, Ohio are in a state of serious shortage of goods. Necessary items for daily life, from food, production materials, until supplies did not arrive on time. This leads to a shock just-in-time model that America has depended on for decades. This system is inherently work-based. Receive goods on time only when needed to save on storage costs and minimize waste. But now, when the container did not arrive on schedule, everything started falling apart. The factory has no raw materials, leading to stagnation. Goods do not reach the market in time, and other companies' massive production also began stationary. Still, consumers, so what? They began to feel a clear shortage of goods. The shop, supermarket no longer filled with products like before. Empty shelves have become a familiar image. The American trade world, which is an important link in the global supply chain, is now suffering severely from its own flow. America, a country once dominated the supply chain globally, now facing its own downfall. The logistics industry is no longer interested in bringing goods to the US. So, from being a country that the whole world depends on, America has now become one difficult place, one risky destination in the eyes of international transport businesses. The ships no longer wanted to come, and the American logistics system also started to become unstable. America's dream of global control is fading. When the trains stop running, the entire American retail world starts to crumble. Big-name stores like Walmart, Target, and Costco, stores we all know, suddenly faced a huge shortage. Empty shelves became the new normal. While out-of-stock items aren't unheard of, this time it's different. The shortage isn't just a brief hiccup, it's a storm that could last. Why? About 70% of top-seller products at these stores, from clothes and toys to electronics and household appliances, come from China. So when containers couldn't make it to the US on time, retail chains were hit hard. According to the National Retail Federation, container imports dropped by 20% in the second half of 2025. That's a staggering number, and it meant products consumers desperately wanted weren't making it to the shelves. Small businesses, without the budget to pivot quickly, found themselves stuck. And the problem got worse, with seasonal products like Halloween toys, Christmas gifts, and New Year's goods. If those don't arrive on time, the financial losses are huge. Take Basic Fund, a toy company, for example. They said, if containers are delayed, 80% of our products will sit unsold. That kind of loss can sink a business. To make matters worse, the market entered a pressure cooker of rising prices and empty shelves. High tariffs and logistics costs pushed prices up, while demand went unmet. Consumers, already anxious from the pandemic, started panic buying, hoarding things they didn't even need. The cycle fed itself, creating a tense, uncontrollable situation. This crisis in retail didn't just stop at out-of-stock items. It sparked a new, unanticipated battle, where multiple lines are pushing both consumer flaws and consumer politics into one big battle for where things or anything else grow up, from low supply to a high prices. Low supply and nervous shoppers have thrown the entire system into chaos. No one saw this coming, but now everyone is in the fight. When the supply chain freezes, nothing runs like it used to. The once stable and strong US economy begins to crumble. By the second quarter of 2025, GDP drops by 1.2%, a significant blow that shows how badly things have shifted. The economy is out of sync, and people start feeling the changes in their everyday lives. One clear sign of this is the 0.8% drop in the PCE index, the steepest decline since the COVID pandemic. This is a red flag, as less consumer spending means a ripple effect through the entire economy, hurting businesses and hitting people's wallets hard. Meanwhile, the domestic logistics system is stuck in a freeze. With commercial truck traffic down 30%, the main arteries of the economy are emptier than ever. Big carriers like Swift and Schneider have no choice but to lay off thousands of drivers. This loss of labor creates a major gap in getting goods from production to the people who need them. To put it simply, it's a domino effect. Cargo ships are canceled, containers don't arrive on time, factories run out of materials, and goods never make it to consumers. The fallout is felt across the entire supply chain, from the seaport to the highways, the supermarket, and finally into people's pockets. These problems aren't just numbers on a chart, they're very real. Prices rise, shelves stay empty, and essential goods become harder to find. The entire economy starts to spin out of control, and no one knows when or if this storm will end. What's happening isn't just a temporary glitch. It's a deep disruption that's shaking the very foundation of the economy. Before the world's eyes, a great change is taking place. Perhaps the last one supply chain restructuring biggest, from behind World War II. Never before have we witnessed such a dramatic transformation. Everything from how goods move to how countries connect with each other through supply chains is being disrupted. And at the heart of this change, it is America, a country once considered a leading giant in the global economy. But now, the new tax policy has put the US in a passive position. Suriname puts yourself out of the global supply chain network. Tax 145% not only disrupts the flow of goods from China, but also leaves the US without an important part of its supply: cheap and abundant goods from China. And the problem is, the US does not immediately have an alternative plan to fill this gap. This is not just a mere trade crisis, but one long-term warning about profound change. This is no longer just a matter of one country or one economy, but of one great economic war. A war without bullets, without threats, but their global influence. With supply chain just weapons, just battlefield main. The world is entering a period where every country and every company must rethink their position in the world's new economic order. And maybe, this will be the decisive moment to see who can slip through. What are these challenges, and who will suffer them? Left behind. The trade war between the US and China has never been as fierce as it is now. With more than $14 billion in lost goods and unpredictable further shocks, the future of the global economy will change forever. Will the US find a way to regain the initiative, or will it continue to fall into a spiral that is difficult to remove? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain: this war is long and arduous.